Pressure does not destroy your intelligence. It distorts your access to it. In calm moments, you are thoughtful, measured, capable. You weigh options. You consider consequences. You respond with reason. But under pressure, something changes. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts accelerate. Urgency becomes loud. Clarity becomes quiet. And later, when the moment has passed, you look back and think, I should have handled that better. This experience is universal. It is not weakness. It is not lack of character. It is not proof that you are incapable. It is biology meeting circumstance without training. Most people believe that clear thinking under pressure is a personality trait. They assume some people are just naturally calm, decisive, and unshaken. But what appears to be natural composure is often trained regulation. What appears to be confidence is often disciplined perception. What appears to be quick intelligence is often practiced restraint. Pressure reveals training. It does not create ability. Consider the moments that test you. A tense conversation. A financial decision with limited time. A mistake at work that demands immediate correction. A family conflict where emotions escalate quickly. In these moments, the body prepares for threat, even if no physical danger exists. The heart rate increases. The mind narrows its focus. The need to act becomes urgent. Urgency feels important. But urgency is not always truth. Without training, the mind defaults to reaction. Reaction seeks relief, not accuracy. It wants the discomfort to end. It wants certainty. It wants control. So it speaks too quickly. It commits too soon. It defends too aggressively. Or it avoids entirely. Then comes regret. Clear thinking under pressure is not about suppressing emotion. It is about understanding it. It is not about moving faster. It is about creating space. It is not about being fearless. It is about being steady. This audiobook is not motivation. It is discipline. You will not be told to stay positive. You will not be encouraged to overpower stress with willpower. Instead, you will learn how your nervous system functions under strain. You will understand why intelligent people make poor decisions in tense moments. You will train the ability to pause internally, even when the external world is loud. You will learn the difference between reacting and choosing. And slowly, steadily, you will build something more powerful than confidence. You will build trust in your own mind. This is a skill. It can be practiced. It can be strengthened. It can become part of your identity. By the end of this journey, pressure will not disappear. But your relationship to it will change. You will not rush to escape it. You will not be controlled by it. You will stand inside it with clarity. If you are ready to train your mind instead of blaming it, stay with me. And if this kind of disciplined, steady growth is what you value, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This space is built for those who want strength without noise, clarity without hype, and confidence without arrogance. Now, let us begin. Chapter 1. Why Pressure Hijacks Your Mind. Pressure does not begin in your thoughts. It begins in your body. Before you consciously interpret a situation as stressful, your nervous system has already reacted. A tone of voice shifts. An email arrives with urgency. A deadline moves closer. A disagreement escalates. Within milliseconds, your brain scans for threat. Not danger in the dramatic sense. Threat to status. Threat to certainty. Threat to control. Threat to belonging. The brain does not distinguish well between physical survival and psychological discomfort. It uses the same alarm system for both. Deep inside the brain is a structure designed for protection. When it detects threat, it signals the release of stress hormones. Adrenaline prepares you to act. Cortisol increases alertness. Heart rate rises. Muscles tighten. Breathing becomes shallow. Attention narrows. This system is efficient. It evolved to keep you alive. But here is the cost. When the survival system activates, the thinking system reduces activity. The part of your brain responsible for long-term planning, rational analysis, and impulse control temporarily loses influence. Not because you are incapable. Not because you lack discipline. But because your body believes speed is more important than precision. Under pressure, Your biology prioritizes immediate reaction over thoughtful evaluation. This is why intelligent people still make poor decisions. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is a shift in operating mode. In calm conditions, you think broadly. You consider multiple perspectives. You anticipate outcomes. Under pressure, your perception narrows. You focus on the most immediate variable, the loudest emotion, the fastest escape. Your thinking becomes shorter term, simpler, more rigid. You may become defensive when calm reflection would have served you better. You may say yes to something you should have evaluated more carefully. You may withdraw completely to avoid discomfort. You may overcommit. Or you may hesitate too long. These are not character flaws. They are survival defaults. The problem is not that the system exists. The problem is that most people never train beyond it. When pressure becomes frequent and unexamined, reaction becomes habit. And habit becomes identity. Someone begins to say, "That's just how I am under stress." Or, "I'm not good in high-pressure situations." Or, "I always overthink when it matters." But what they are describing is not personality. It is conditioning. Untrained pressure responses create predictable consequences. Conversations escalate unnecessarily. Opportunities are missed because of hesitation. Decisions are rushed to relieve discomfort. Relationships suffer from emotional volatility. Leaders lose credibility because steadiness disappears when it is most needed. The hidden cost of emotional reaction is not just the immediate mistake. It is the erosion of trust, in yourself and from others. Each time you react impulsively, you reinforce the neural pathway of urgency. Each time you avoid discomfort without reflection, you strengthen the association between stress and escape. Over time, the mind learns that pressure equals loss of control. But awareness interrupts that pattern. You must first understand that your mind is not broken under pressure. It is protective. The narrowing of perception, the rush to decide, the urge to defend, these are attempts to restore safety. The body seeks resolution. It wants closure. It wants relief. Relief feels like clarity. But relief is not clarity. Relief is the reduction of tension. Clarity is the expansion of understanding. When you mistake relief for clarity, you make decisions that feel good in the moment but unstable over time. The untrained mind under pressure seeks immediate emotional resolution. The trained mind tolerates temporary discomfort for long-term accuracy. This is the turning point. You cannot eliminate the biological response. You should not try. The goal is not to suppress your nervous system. It is to recognize when it has taken control. Notice the signals. Tightened jaw. Faster speech. Urgency in tone. Shortened thinking. A strong desire to end the situation quickly. These are indicators that your survival system is active. Recognition creates space. The moment you notice the shift, you are no longer fully inside it. You are observing it. And observation is the first step toward regulation. Pressure only hijacks an unconscious mind. It cannot fully control an aware one. This does not mean you will immediately become calm. It means you will begin to see the mechanics of your reactions. And once something is seen clearly, it becomes trainable. Clarity under pressure begins with removing self-blame. You are not weak because your heart races in conflict. You are not incompetent because you feel overwhelmed by sudden responsibility. You are not incapable because you hesitate before a major decision. You are human. The difference between those who crumble under pressure and those who remain steady is not genetics. It is familiarity with their internal responses. It is repeated exposure with reflection. It is disciplined awareness. Pressure reveals where training is required. When you understand that your mind shifts into survival mode automatically, you stop being surprised by your reactions. And when you are no longer surprised, you can prepare. This chapter is not about fixing your reactions. It is about seeing them. The nervous system defaults to speed. The thinking mind requires space. Under pressure, you lose clarity not because you lack intelligence, but because your biology temporarily prioritizes urgency. Now that you understand the mechanism, you can begin to change your relationship to it. Awareness is the first discipline. And discipline, applied consistently, transforms reaction into choice. In the next chapter, We will examine this shift more deeply, the difference between automatic reaction and deliberate decision. You will begin to see how small internal gaps can restore authority over your own thinking. For now, remember this. Pressure does not reduce intelligence. It reduces access. And access can be trained. Chapter 2: The Biology of Stress and Clear Thinking. To think clearly under pressure, you must first accept an uncomfortable truth. Your mind is not designed to prioritize clarity. It is designed to prioritize survival. This is not a flaw. It is an inheritance. Long before complex decisions existed, the human nervous system evolved to answer one question quickly: am I safe? When the answer is uncertain, the body prepares for action. This preparation happens automatically, below conscious awareness, and far faster than rational thought. The stress response is not psychological first. It is biological first. When pressure appears, the brain releases adrenaline to increase speed and force. Cortisol follows to maintain alertness. Blood flow shifts away from long-term thinking and toward immediate action. The senses sharpen, but they narrow. Attention locks onto what feels most urgent. This is the fight, flight, or freeze response. In physical danger, this response is life-saving. In modern life, it often misfires. Emails, deadlines, social conflict, financial uncertainty, these are not predators. But the nervous system responds as if they are. Under stress, your perception changes. Time feels compressed. Options feel limited. Complexity feels intolerable. Nuance disappears. The mind wants resolution, not accuracy. This is why urgency feels louder than logic. Urgency is carried by the body. Logic is processed by higher cognition. When the body is activated, it dominates the conversation. You may notice that under pressure, your inner dialogue becomes absolute. Words like always, never, must, and now appear. This language reflects narrowed perception. The mind seeks certainty to regain control. Certainty feels safe, even when it is false. Clear thinking requires tolerance for uncertainty. But stress reduces that tolerance. When cortisol remains elevated, the brain becomes less flexible. Creativity declines. Perspective shrinks. You become more reactive to perceived threats and less receptive to new information. You may misinterpret neutral signals as hostile. You may rush to defend, justify, or withdraw. This is not because you lack emotional maturity. It is because stress biases perception toward danger. The freeze response is often misunderstood. It is not laziness or avoidance. It is the nervous system choosing immobility when action feels unsafe. Under high pressure, some people rush. Others shut down. Both are survival strategies. Neither produces clarity. Clear thinking requires the nervous system to be regulated enough to allow the thinking mind to re-engage. This is where many people go wrong. They attempt to think their way out of stress while their body remains activated. They tell themselves to calm down, but the physiology has not shifted. The result is frustration. The mind cannot override biology through logic alone. Regulation must precede reasoning. Understanding this removes self-criticism. When you know that your narrowed thinking is a biological state, not a personal failure, you stop fighting yourself. Fighting the response prolongs it. Observing it shortens it. Awareness sends a signal of safety. When you notice your heart rate, your breathing, your tension, you are already engaging a different neural pathway. You are moving from automatic reaction to conscious regulation. Even brief awareness reduces the intensity of the stress response. This is the foundation of control under pressure. The nervous system learns through repetition. If every stressful moment ends in panic, rushing, or avoidance, the system reinforces those patterns. If stress is met with awareness and measured response, the system adapts. This is not about eliminating stress. It is about teaching your body that pressure does not equal danger. When the body feels safer, the mind thinks wider. You begin to perceive options again. You regain access to memory, reasoning, and long-term perspective. The urgency softens. Not because the situation disappears, but because your interpretation changes. Interpretation determines response. The biology of stress explains why willpower alone fails. Willpower is a cognitive resource. Stress depletes it. Under pressure, The mind needs structure, not motivation. This is why disciplined individuals appear calm. They have trained their nervous system to tolerate activation without losing control. They expect pressure. They recognize its signals. They regulate early. They do not wait until clarity is gone. Understanding the biology gives you leverage. You stop demanding perfection under stress. You start training capacity. This chapter is not about mastering techniques yet. It is about understanding the terrain. You cannot navigate what you do not understand. Stress narrows perception. Urgency overrides logic. The nervous system defaults to survival. These are not problems to fix. They are conditions to manage. Clear thinking under pressure begins when you respect the order of operations. Body first. Mind second. In the next chapter, we will explore the critical distinction between reacting and choosing. You will learn how a small internal pause can interrupt automatic behavior and restore agency. For now, hold this truth steady. You cannot think clearly while your body believes you are unsafe. But you can teach your body that pressure is not a threat. And when you do, clarity returns, quietly, steadily, and reliably. Chapter 3: Emotional Control Before Logical Control. Before you can make a better decision, you must first regain emotional balance. Most people attempt to solve pressure at the level of thought. They try to argue with themselves. They try to force logic into a system that is already overwhelmed. They analyze while agitated. They reason while tense. But emotion always arrives before logic. When pressure appears, the emotional brain activates first. It sends signals of urgency, threat, or discomfort. Only after that does the thinking mind attempt to interpret what is happening. If the emotional intensity is too high, interpretation becomes distorted. This is why trying to be rational in the middle of strong emotion often fails. Emotion is not the enemy. It is information. But unregulated emotion becomes interference. Under pressure, you may feel anger, fear, embarrassment, or defensiveness. These emotions are not wrong. They are signals. Anger may signal perceived injustice. Fear may signal uncertainty. Embarrassment may signal social risk. Defensiveness may signal perceived attack. The mistake is not feeling these emotions. The mistake is becoming them. When you become fused with emotion, you react from it. When you observe emotion, you gain distance from it. This distinction changes everything. The first discipline is simple: name what you are feeling. Not dramatically. Not judgmentally. Calmly. I feel defensive. I feel anxious. I feel rushed. I feel pressured. Labeling emotion reduces its intensity. When you name it, you shift from immersion to observation. The brain moves from reactive circuitry to reflective circuitry. The emotion does not disappear, but it becomes manageable. Unlabeled emotion feels overwhelming. Labeled emotion becomes specific. Specificity reduces chaos. There is also a timing element that most people ignore. Emotional waves are temporary. When triggered, they rise, peak, and fall. If you interrupt the cycle by reacting immediately, you extend the wave. If you allow it to crest without action, it diminishes. Strong emotional surges often last seconds, not hours, unless you feed them with thought and behavior. The discipline is to delay reaction long enough for the wave to pass its peak. This is where many people fear losing authority. They believe pausing signals weakness. They believe immediate response signals strength. In reality, the opposite is often true. Composure communicates control. When you pause before speaking, you are not surrendering ground. You are stabilizing perception. When you take a breath before deciding, you are not hesitating out of fear. You are recalibrating clarity. Emotional control does not mean suppression. Suppression pushes emotion down without processing it. Control means allowing the emotion to exist without allowing it to dictate behavior. There is a difference between feeling anger and speaking angrily. There is a difference between feeling fear and acting fearfully. There is a difference between feeling urgency and rushing. The disciplined mind recognizes emotion as internal weather. Weather shifts. It does not define the sky. To create separation, use neutral internal language. Instead of saying, "This is a disaster," say, "This feels intense." Instead of, they are attacking me, say, I feel challenged. Instead of, I have to fix this now, say, there is pressure to respond. The shift may seem small. It is not. Language shapes perception. Perception shapes response. When your language becomes neutral, your nervous system begins to calm. When your nervous system calms, your thinking widens. You cannot force clarity. You create conditions for it. One breath taken deliberately slows the physiological cascade. One moment of silence interrupts impulsive speech. One labeled emotion reduces confusion. Small interventions create internal order. The goal is not emotional emptiness. The goal is emotional steadiness. Steadiness allows logic to return. Most regrettable decisions are made in the first surge of emotion. The mind seeks relief. It wants the discomfort to end quickly. But quick relief often produces long-term consequence. Emotional discipline means tolerating short-term discomfort for long-term stability. This is strength. Notice how different a decision feels when made from calm versus made from agitation. The calm decision feels grounded. It feels deliberate. It may not feel dramatic, but it feels solid. The agitated decision feels urgent. It feels necessary. But afterward, it often feels unstable. Your task is not to eliminate emotion. It is to prevent emotion from collapsing your perspective. The sequence matters. Emotion arises. You notice it. You name it. You allow it to crest. Then you decide. When you reverse the sequence, emotion arises, you act immediately. Clarity never has a chance to participate. Control emotion first. Logic follows. In high-pressure environments, the most powerful individuals are not the loudest. They are the most regulated. They do not rush to assert dominance. They do not react to every shift in tone. They respond when they choose to respond. This level of steadiness is not personality. It is practice. Each time you pause instead of react, you strengthen a new pathway. Each time you label instead of lash out, you increase control. Each time you allow emotion to pass before speaking, you build authority within yourself. And authority within yourself changes how others perceive you. Pressure will still activate emotion. That is unavoidable. But you no longer need to fear the activation. Because now you understand the order. Emotion first. Observation second. Decision third. In the next chapter, we will deepen this discipline by examining the power of the pause, the small internal gap that transforms reaction into choice. For now, remember, you do not need to eliminate emotion to think clearly. You need to outlast it. Chapter 4. The Power of the Pause. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. Most people never notice it. Pressure compresses that space. The email arrives and you reply instantly. The criticism lands and you defend immediately. The opportunity appears and you commit without reflection. The conflict begins and your voice rises to match it. It feels automatic. It feels necessary. It feels fast. But speed is not the same as strength. High performers in demanding environments are not immune to pressure. Their bodies activate like anyone else. Their hearts accelerate. Their thoughts sharpen. But they have trained one decisive skill: they pause. The pause is small, often invisible, sometimes only a breath. But it changes everything. Without a pause, you are reacting. With a pause, you are choosing. Reaction is driven by momentum. Choice is driven by awareness. The pause interrupts momentum. When pressure hits, your nervous system pushes you toward immediate action. It tells you to speak now, decide now, fix now. The pause challenges that impulse. It says, wait. This waiting is not hesitation. It is calibration. Imagine the difference between firing a weapon without aiming and taking one steady second to align the target. The extra second changes the outcome. In conversation, in leadership, in decision-making, the same principle applies. A micropause before responding communicates composure. It signals that you are not controlled by the moment. It signals that you are considering, not reacting. Silence under pressure often feels uncomfortable. The mind interprets silence as vulnerability. But silence is strength when it is intentional. When someone raises their voice and you lower yours, you change the dynamic. When someone pushes for an immediate answer and you say, "Give me a moment to think," you shift the pace. When urgency rises and you slow your breathing, you reclaim authority. The pause regulates physiology first. Breathing is the fastest bridge between body and mind. Under stress, breathing becomes shallow and rapid. This reinforces the stress response. Deliberate breathing reverses it. Inhale slowly through the nose. Hold briefly. Exhale longer than the inhale. Repeat. This is not dramatic. It is mechanical. Longer exhales signal safety to the nervous system. Safety reduces activation. Reduced activation restores access to higher thinking. You do not need 5 minutes. Sometimes one conscious breath is enough to prevent an impulsive statement you would later regret. The pause also creates perceptual distance. When you delay response, you gain perspective. You begin to ask different questions. Instead of "How do I stop this discomfort?" you ask, "What actually requires action?" Instead of "How do I defend myself?" you ask, "What is the objective here?" Pressure narrows thinking to self-protection. The pause reopens objective evaluation. Many people fear that pausing will make them appear indecisive. In reality, rushed decisions reveal instability. Calm delays reveal control. Decisiveness is not speed. It is clarity plus commitment. The pause ensures clarity before commitment. In high-stakes environments, medical, military, executive leadership, individuals are trained to slow down during critical moments. When stakes rise, pace decreases. This is counterintuitive to untrained minds. When pressure rises, most people accelerate. But acceleration increases error. Slowing down prevents collapse. You may notice resistance to this idea. The mind will argue that some situations require immediate action. That is true in rare physical emergencies. But most modern pressure is psychological, not physical. You are rarely seconds away from catastrophe. You are seconds away from discomfort. And discomfort can be tolerated. The pause trains tolerance. At first, it will feel unnatural. Your body will push for urgency. You will feel the urge to speak quickly, decide quickly, end quickly. That urge is the old pattern. Hold steady. One breath. One moment of silence. One sentence that begins with, "Let me think about that." These are small acts of discipline. But discipline compounds. Each pause weakens the automatic reaction pathway. Each pause strengthens deliberate control. Over time, the space between stimulus and response widens naturally. What once felt urgent begins to feel manageable. The pause also protects relationships. Under pressure, words become sharper. Tone becomes harder. When you pause, you prevent escalation. You give yourself the chance to choose language that communicates clearly without aggression. Steadiness influences environments. When one person slows the pace, others unconsciously adjust. Emotional intensity often mirrors itself. But regulation also mirrors itself. Your calm becomes contagious. This is leadership at the psychological level. The pause is not passive. It is active control over timing. Timing determines outcome. Consider how many regrets in your life could have been prevented by 5 seconds of silence. A text not sent. A decision delayed. A comment withheld. A reaction reconsidered. 5 seconds is not weakness. It is wisdom. Pressure compresses time. The pause expands it. And in expanded time, clarity has room to enter. You do not need to overhaul your personality to think clearly under pressure. You need to insert small, consistent pauses. The pause is the doorway between biology and choice. In the next chapter, we will explore how to reframe pressure itself, how to interpret it not as threat, but as information. Because once you learn to pause, you are ready to reinterpret. For now, practice this simple discipline. When pressure rises, slow down. Not dramatically. Not visibly. Internally. One breath. One moment. One choice. That is where control begins. Chapter 5. Reframing pressure as information. Pressure feels like a threat. That is the default interpretation. Your body tightens. Your thoughts accelerate. Urgency rises. The situation feels dangerous, not necessarily to your physical safety, but to your identity, your competence, your stability. But pressure is not always danger. Often, it is information. The untrained mind interprets pressure as something to escape. The trained mind interprets pressure as something to study. This shift changes everything. When you label pressure as threat, your nervous system escalates. When you label it as data, your nervous system stabilizes. The situation may remain intense, but your interpretation softens its edge. Pressure is a signal that something matters. It signals stakes. It signals expectation. It signals uncertainty. It signals responsibility. But a signal is not a verdict. It does not automatically mean catastrophe. It does not automatically mean failure. It simply means attention is required. The difference between collapse and clarity often lies in interpretation. Consider two people in the same situation, a presentation before senior leadership. One interprets the pressure as a threat to their reputation. Their mind says, "If I fail, I lose credibility." The body tightens. Speech accelerates. Mistakes increase. The other interprets the pressure as an opportunity to demonstrate preparation. Their mind says, "This matters. I will focus." The body still activates, but the activation feels like readiness, not danger. Same pressure. Different interpretation. Different outcome. Your nervous system responds not only to events, but to meaning. Reframing does not deny reality. It reorganizes it. Instead of asking, "How do I make this stop?" ask, "What is this asking of me?" Pressure in conversation may be asking for clarity. Pressure in business may be asking for prioritization. Pressure in relationships may be asking for boundaries. Pressure in decision-making may be asking for focus. When you see pressure as information, you stop resisting it. Resistance amplifies stress. Engagement transforms it. There is also a practical benefit. When you treat pressure as data, you become curious instead of reactive. Curiosity slows emotion. Ask yourself, what exactly feels urgent? Often, you will discover that urgency is vague. The mind generalizes. It says, everything is wrong. But when examined, the issue narrows. Specificity reduces overwhelm. Instead of "this is a disaster," it becomes, "this deadline moved up by 2 days." Instead of "they are attacking me," it becomes, "they disagree with this point." Instead of "I cannot handle this," it becomes, "this is unfamiliar." When you define the pressure clearly, it loses intensity. Pressure thrives in ambiguity. Clarity weakens it. Another important distinction: pressure does not always require immediate action. Sometimes it requires deliberate sequencing. The untrained mind tries to solve everything at once. The trained mind asks, what is the next necessary step? Not the final solution. Not the entire outcome. Just the next step. Pressure becomes manageable when broken into increments. This is strategic awareness. Instead of absorbing the full emotional weight of a situation, you isolate the variable within your control. Control reduces anxiety. Even small control restores stability. Pressure is not your enemy. Misinterpretation is. When you treat pressure as proof that you are incapable, you shrink. When you treat pressure as evidence that growth is required, you expand. This does not mean pressure feels comfortable. It means you stop personalizing it. Pressure is situational. It is not identity. You are not bad under pressure. You are untrained in specific environments. Training changes response. Reframing also protects your self-concept. Many people attach their worth to performance in stressful moments. One mistake becomes evidence of inadequacy. This interpretation magnifies stress in future situations. Instead, view pressure as feedback. If you feel overwhelmed, it signals capacity limits. Capacity can be increased. If you feel rushed, it signals pacing imbalance. Pacing can be adjusted. If you feel defensive, it signals perceived threat to ego. Ego can be examined. Information leads to improvement. Threat leads to avoidance. There is strength in neutrality. When pressure arises, say internally, "This is information." Repeat it. This is information. The phrase interrupts catastrophic thinking. It reminds you that what you are experiencing is a signal, not a sentence. Pressure also reveals priorities. If something creates intensity, it likely holds value. Value requires care. Care requires attention. This is not danger. It is responsibility. Responsibility can feel heavy when misinterpreted as burden. But when seen as opportunity for competence, it becomes energizing. The body's activation under pressure can be redirected. Instead of labeling the increased heart rate as anxiety, label it as readiness. Instead of labeling tension as fear, label it as preparation. The physiology is similar. The meaning changes the experience. You cannot always reduce pressure, but you can reinterpret it. And interpretation determines response. In previous chapters, you learned to observe emotion and insert a pause. Now you are learning to shift perception itself. When you pause and then reframe, you transform pressure from something that controls you into something that informs you. This is psychological maturity. In the next chapter, we will explore how stress amplifies cognitive bias, how your thinking shortcuts become more distorted under strain, and how awareness prevents those distortions from steering your decisions. For now, hold this steady principle. Pressure is not danger. It is data. And data, when interpreted calmly, leads to clarity. Chapter 6. Avoiding cognitive bias under stress. When pressure rises, your thinking does not simply become faster. It becomes narrower. And when thinking narrows, it becomes biased. Bias is not a moral failure. It is a mental shortcut. The brain uses shortcuts to conserve energy. In calm conditions, these shortcuts are often efficient. Under stress, they become distorted. Stress amplifies bias. You begin to see what confirms your fear. You ignore what contradicts it. You assume the worst-case scenario is the most likely one. You interpret neutral signals as negative. You become overconfident in the first conclusion that reduces uncertainty. This is not irrationality. It is compression. Pressure compresses perspective. And compressed perspective increases error. One common distortion under stress is confirmation bias. When you feel threatened, your mind searches for evidence that validates the threat. If you believe someone is against you, you selectively notice their tone, their wording, their facial expression, all filtered through suspicion. The mind says, "See? I was right." But you were not necessarily right. You were focused. Stress reduces openness to alternative interpretations. It feels safer to cling to a single narrative than to tolerate ambiguity. Another distortion is catastrophizing. Under pressure, the brain exaggerates potential negative outcomes. A mistake becomes career-ending. A disagreement becomes relationship-ending. A setback becomes permanent failure. Catastrophizing creates urgency. Urgency demands immediate action. Immediate action often bypasses thoughtful analysis. Then there is tunnel vision. When under strain, you fixate on one variable. You may obsess over a single metric, a single comment, a single risk. Meanwhile, broader context disappears. You lose sight of long-term objectives. You forget past successes. You ignore stabilizing factors. Tunnel vision feels focused, but it is incomplete. Overconfidence bias also emerges under pressure. This may seem contradictory. How can stress create both fear and overconfidence? When uncertainty feels intolerable, the mind may latch onto the first plausible solution and inflate its certainty. Deciding quickly reduces discomfort. Once decided, the mind defends that choice aggressively. Confidence becomes emotional, not analytical. Stress makes you want to be sure. Not because you have enough information, but because uncertainty feels threatening. These distortions are predictable, and predictability allows preparation. The disciplined mind does not attempt to eliminate bias. It anticipates it. When you recognize that stress narrows perspective, you deliberately widen it. You ask questions that challenge your first interpretation. What evidence contradicts my assumption? What would this look like if I were calm? What is the most likely outcome, not just the worst? What am I ignoring because it feels inconvenient? These questions are not dramatic. They are stabilizing. Bias thrives in unquestioned thought. It weakens under examination. Notice the difference between a reactive statement and a reflective one. "This will never work" becomes "this feels risky." "They are trying to undermine me" becomes "I feel challenged." "I have to decide now" becomes "there is pressure to decide." Language again influences perception. The goal is not to become slow and indecisive. It is to become accurate. Accuracy requires emotional neutrality. Even partial neutrality increases cognitive flexibility. When the nervous system is activated, your brain seeks efficiency. Efficiency often means simplicity. But complex situations require nuance. Nuance disappears under stress unless intentionally restored. This is why structured thinking frameworks are powerful. They compensate for bias. When you deliberately evaluate worst case, best case, and most likely scenarios, you interrupt catastrophizing. When you consider reversible versus irreversible decisions, you reduce false urgency. Structure stabilizes thought. Without structure, emotion guides attention. With structure, reasoning regains authority. Another subtle bias under pressure is personalization. You interpret events as reflections of your worth. A critical comment becomes proof of inadequacy. A delayed response becomes rejection. A disagreement becomes disrespect. Personalization intensifies emotion. Emotion intensifies bias. When you remove ego from interpretation, clarity returns. Not everything is about you. Often, pressure is systemic, not personal. This recognition reduces defensive reactions. Stress also reduces empathy. When you feel threatened, your focus turns inward. You prioritize self-protection. But many decisions under pressure involve other people. When empathy collapses, communication suffers. Deliberately asking, "What might they be experiencing?" widens perception. It softens rigidity. It creates space for strategic response instead of emotional retaliation. Bias under stress is not proof of weakness. It is proof of activation. The question is not whether bias will appear. It will. The question is whether you will notice it before acting on it. Awareness is intervention. Each time you identify a distortion before speaking or deciding, you strengthen disciplined thinking. Each time you slow down long enough to question your first conclusion, you increase accuracy. Clear thinkers are not free from bias. They are practiced in challenging it. Pressure magnifies whatever habits you have built. If you have built the habit of unquestioned reaction, stress will amplify it. If you have built the habit of reflective pause, stress will reinforce it. This is the difference between instinct and training. In the next chapter, we will explore how to slow down fast decisions, how to maintain speed when necessary without sacrificing thoughtfulness. Because clarity under pressure is not about paralysis. It is about controlled movement. For now, remember. Stress narrows perspective. Bias fills the gap. Awareness restores balance. And balance protects your decisions. Chapter 7. Slowing down fast decisions. Speed is often mistaken for intelligence. In high-pressure moments, quick decisions are praised. Hesitation is criticized. The ability to respond immediately is equated with competence. But this belief confuses movement with mastery. Fast does not always mean clear. Under pressure, the mind feels compelled to decide quickly to reduce discomfort. The faster you decide, the sooner the tension ends. This creates the illusion that speed equals effectiveness. In reality, speed often serves emotional relief, not strategic accuracy. The disciplined mind distinguishes between urgency and importance. Urgency is emotional. Importance is structural. Urgency demands action now. Importance asks for correctness over time. When you confuse the two, you rush decisions that should be considered and delay actions that should be taken. Slowing down does not mean stopping. It means pacing. There are moments when fast action is required. But even in those moments, clarity matters. The difference is preparation. Those who act quickly and accurately under pressure have already thought through similar scenarios. They are not inventing responses in the moment. They are executing rehearsed principles. When preparation is absent, speed becomes dangerous. One simple discipline for slowing down fast decisions is time expansion. Ask yourself how this decision will matter in the future. 10 minutes from now. 10 days from now. 10 months from now. The mind naturally overweights the present. This exercise restores temporal balance. Many decisions that feel urgent lose significance when viewed over time. Others reveal their importance. This distinction helps allocate energy appropriately. Another stabilizing discipline is identifying reversibility. Some decisions can be changed later. Others cannot. Stress often makes everything feel irreversible. This perception increases fear. But most decisions are adjustable. When you identify reversibility, urgency decreases. If a decision can be revised, you do not need perfection. You need direction. Irreversible decisions deserve more time. Reversible decisions benefit from movement. This distinction prevents paralysis and recklessness simultaneously. Visualization also slows impulsivity. When pressure pushes you to act, visualize the outcome of your decision. Not just the immediate relief, but the longer-term consequence. Imagine explaining the decision to someone you respect. Imagine living with the result. This is not to induce fear. It is to restore perspective. Clear decisions feel calm. Not because they are easy, but because they are aligned. Rushed decisions feel sharp. They carry tension. They feel brittle. The body often knows the difference before the mind does. Pay attention to bodily signals. If a decision feels frantic, if your breathing is shallow, if your jaw is tight, pause. These are indicators that emotion is steering. Slowing down allows the body to settle. When the body settles, the mind becomes more reliable. Elite performers understand this intuitively. In moments that appear fast from the outside, they are internally slow. Their movements are precise. Their speech is measured. Their attention is narrow but not panicked. Internal speed matters more than external speed. You can move quickly while thinking slowly. This requires discipline. When someone pressures you for an immediate answer, you are not obligated to comply. Saying, "I need a moment to consider," is not weakness. It is responsibility. Those who respect clarity will respect the pause. Those who push against it are often reacting themselves. Do not allow others' urgency to become your impulsivity. Pressure is contagious. So is calm. Another important discipline is limiting options under pressure. Too many choices increase anxiety. Under stress, simplify. Identify the top 2 viable options. Evaluate them briefly. Choose deliberately. This is not oversimplification. It is focus. The mind cannot evaluate infinite variables under pressure. Structured limitation improves decision quality. Slowing down also means accepting imperfection. Many people rush decisions because they seek certainty. They want assurance that the choice is correct. But certainty is rarely available in complex situations. Waiting for it leads to paralysis or impulsive action disguised as confidence. Clarity does not require certainty. It requires coherence. A coherent decision aligns with available information, values, and long-term direction. It may still involve risk, but it is intentional. Stress distorts risk perception. It magnifies potential loss and minimizes potential gain. Slowing down allows more balanced assessment. Ask yourself what you would decide if fear were not driving. Often, the answer becomes clearer. The ability to slow down under pressure is a trained skill. It improves with repetition. Each time you resist the urge to rush, you strengthen control. Each time you choose pacing over panic, you reinforce clarity. This chapter is about reclaiming timing. You do not need to eliminate speed. You need to regulate it. In the next chapter, we will introduce mental frameworks that support clear thinking under pressure. These frameworks provide structure when emotion threatens to take over. For now, remember, urgency seeks relief. Clarity seeks alignment. Slow the mind, even when the world moves fast. That is disciplined decision-making. Chapter 8: Mental Frameworks for Clear Thinking. When pressure rises, unstructured thinking collapses. Emotion fills the gaps where structure is absent. Bias enters where frameworks are missing. Urgency dominates where principles are unclear. This is why disciplined thinkers rely on mental frameworks. A framework is not a rigid rule. It is a stabilizing structure. It reduces chaos. It organizes thought. It protects clarity when emotion intensifies. Under pressure, you do not rise to the level of your intention. You fall to the level of your structure. One powerful discipline is first principles thinking. When stress escalates, the mind often reacts to surface appearances. It accepts assumptions without questioning them. It treats opinions as facts. It confuses interpretation with reality. First principles thinking strips away assumptions. Instead of asking, "What should I do?" ask, "What is objectively true here?" Separate facts from interpretation. The deadline changed. That is a fact. This is impossible, is interpretation. They disagreed with you. That is a fact. They are undermining me, is interpretation. Revenue declined. That is a fact. The business is failing, is interpretation. When you reduce a situation to its fundamental truths, emotion loses leverage. From those truths, you build upward logically. This prevents exaggerated narratives from steering decisions. Another stabilizing framework is inversion, thinking backward. Instead of asking how to succeed, ask how to fail. Instead of asking how to win the argument, ask what would escalate it. Instead of asking how to secure trust, ask what would destroy it. Inversion reveals hidden risks. Under pressure, the mind becomes outcome-focused. It fixates on what it wants. Inversion shifts attention to what must be avoided. This broadens perspective. Often, preventing a mistake is more powerful than forcing a breakthrough. Inversion slows impulsivity. It forces deliberate examination. Another practical framework is evaluating worst case, best case, and most likely outcomes. Stress exaggerates the worst case. Optimism under stress may exaggerate the best case. Rarely do people consider the most likely case with neutrality. When you calmly outline all three scenarios, the emotional charge decreases. Worst case, what is the realistic damage? Best case, what is the potential upside? Most likely, what outcome sits between extremes? Most decisions do not lead to catastrophe. Nor do they lead to perfection. They land somewhere in the middle. Seeing this middle ground reduces fear and reckless optimism simultaneously. Decision trees are another form of clarity. Under pressure, the mind tries to solve everything at once. A decision tree breaks complexity into sequences. If this happens, then that follows. If that follows, then this is required. Step by step. When you map consequences logically, you prevent emotional overreach. You begin to see that even difficult outcomes have manageable paths forward. Structure restores control. Frameworks do not eliminate stress. They contain it. When you have predefined principles, you do not need to invent clarity in the moment. You apply what you have practiced. This is why disciplined individuals appear steady. They do not rely on inspiration. They rely on structure. There is also power in narrowing focus intentionally. When overwhelmed, identify the single most critical variable. Not every issue deserves equal weight. What is the lever that moves the system? Often, solving one central issue reduces surrounding pressure. Without frameworks, the mind drifts. With frameworks, it anchors. Anchored thinking resists panic. It is important to understand that frameworks must be practiced in calm conditions. You cannot expect perfect clarity under stress if you have never trained structured thinking before. Rehearse mentally. Reflect regularly. Build familiarity with these models so that under pressure they feel natural. Frameworks reduce emotional noise. When emotion surges, structure becomes the guide. You move from reactive narrative to analytical evaluation. You step out of chaos into order. This is not cold detachment. It is disciplined perception. Clear thinkers do not suppress emotion. They simply prevent it from overwhelming structure. As you continue to practice, you will notice something subtle. Pressure will still arise. Emotion will still activate. But your mind will reach for structure instead of panic. That reach is growth. In the next chapter, we will address overwhelm and mental clutter, how information overload and decision fatigue weaken clarity, and how simplification restores it. For now, remember, emotion creates noise. Frameworks create order. Order sustains clarity. And clarity sustains authority under pressure. Chapter 9, Managing Overwhelm and Mental Clutter. Overwhelm is not always caused by pressure itself. It is often caused by volume. Too many inputs. Too many decisions. Too many open loops in the mind. Messages unanswered. Tasks unfinished. Conversations unresolved. Expectations unspoken. Possibilities unfiltered. When volume increases, clarity decreases. The brain has limits. It cannot process infinite variables simultaneously. Under calm conditions, those limits are manageable. Under pressure, they shrink. Stress reduces cognitive bandwidth. This is why small problems feel large when you are already overwhelmed. It is not the size of the problem. It is the capacity available to handle it. Mental clutter drains that capacity. Clutter is not only physical. It is informational and emotional. Every unresolved decision occupies space. Every unmade choice consumes energy. Every open question competes for attention. When pressure enters an already cluttered system, collapse feels immediate. The disciplined mind understands subtraction. Clarity is not achieved by adding more strategies. It is achieved by removing excess. Begin with simplification. Under pressure, do not attempt to solve everything. Identify the 3 most important priorities. Not 5. Not 10. 3. The rule of 3 forces focus. When you narrow your priorities, you free mental bandwidth. You reduce internal noise. You direct energy intentionally. Overwhelm often disguises itself as productivity. The mind jumps between tasks rapidly. It feels busy. But busyness is not effectiveness. It is fragmentation. Fragmentation weakens decision quality. Multitasking under pressure increases error. Each switch between tasks consumes attention. The brain requires time to reorient. When switching becomes constant, clarity deteriorates. Single tasking restores order. Complete one meaningful action before moving to the next. Even small completions create psychological stability. Progress reduces anxiety. Another hidden contributor to overwhelm is decision fatigue. Every choice consumes mental energy. What to wear. What to respond to first. What to prioritize. What to postpone. When you make too many small decisions, you exhaust the energy required for important ones. Disciplined individuals reduce trivial decisions. They standardize routines. They pre-commit to certain behaviors. They simplify environments. This conserves mental strength for moments that require depth. Ask yourself which decisions can be automated, which can be delegated, which can be eliminated. Elimination is powerful. Not every opportunity deserves pursuit. Not every request requires acceptance. Not every message requires immediate reply. Boundaries reduce clutter. Pressure feels heavier when you say yes too often. Mental clutter also comes from unresolved emotion, lingering resentment, unspoken frustration, quiet worry. These thoughts replay beneath awareness. They consume background processing power. Reflection clears emotional backlog. Writing thoughts down externalizes them. Speaking concerns calmly resolves ambiguity. Naming worry reduces its intensity. When thoughts remain internal and undefined, they multiply. Externalizing simplifies. There is also a difference between complexity and complication. Complexity is natural in meaningful work and relationships. Complication is unnecessary addition. Often, we complicate situations by overanalyzing motives, predicting distant outcomes, or rehearsing conversations repeatedly. Return to the present variable. What must be handled now? Not next month. Not hypothetically. Not emotionally. Just the current step. When you narrow focus to the present actionable variable, overwhelm reduces. Another discipline is controlling input. Under stress, many people consume more information, more opinions, more news, more analysis. They believe more data will create clarity. Often, it creates noise. Limit input when under pressure. Too much information without structure increases confusion. Select only what is necessary. Protect attention as a resource. Attention is finite. Overwhelm is often a signal that your commitments exceed your capacity. This is not failure. It is feedback. Capacity can grow, but only gradually. If pressure constantly exceeds capacity, chronic stress develops. Chronic stress erodes clarity long-term. Sustainable clarity requires realistic pacing. You cannot think clearly if you are perpetually exhausted. Rest is not indulgence. It is maintenance. Sleep restores cognitive flexibility. Physical movement reduces accumulated tension. Silence recalibrates perception. These are not luxuries. They are foundations. The disciplined mind respects its limits. Managing overwhelm is not about becoming indifferent. It is about becoming selective. Selective attention. Selective commitment. Selective response. Clarity thrives in simplicity. When the mind is uncluttered, pressure feels contained rather than chaotic. You begin to see structure within demand. You respond to what matters. You release what does not. This is quiet strength. In the next chapter, we will explore psychological resilience, how repeated measured exposure to discomfort builds stability under pressure. For now, remember, overwhelm is volume without structure. Clarity is focus with intention. Reduce the noise. Keep what matters. And your thinking will steady itself. Chapter 10: Building Psychological Resilience. Resilience is not toughness. It is steadiness. Toughness often implies suppression. It suggests pushing through without feeling. Resilience is different. It is the capacity to feel pressure without collapsing under it. It is the ability to recover quickly. It is stability in motion. Clear thinking under pressure depends on resilience. Without resilience, every challenge feels personal. Every setback feels permanent. Every mistake feels defining. The nervous system activates intensely and remains activated. Clarity disappears not because the situation is unmanageable, but because recovery is slow. Resilience shortens recovery time. Pressure is not what breaks most people. It is unprocessed pressure repeated without reflection. Resilience is built through controlled exposure. Avoidance weakens tolerance. If you constantly escape discomfort, your threshold lowers. Smaller stressors begin to feel overwhelming. The nervous system becomes sensitive. Reaction becomes quicker. Clarity becomes fragile. But when you intentionally expose yourself to manageable discomfort, capacity expands. This does not require dramatic hardship. It requires small, deliberate challenges. Difficult conversations approached calmly. Responsibilities accepted instead of postponed. Decisions made without perfect certainty. Feedback received without immediate defense. Each small exposure teaches the nervous system a new lesson: pressure is survivable. Survivability reduces fear. When the body learns that activation does not equal danger, it stops overreacting. Emotional intensity decreases. Thinking remains accessible. This is stress inoculation. Just as the immune system strengthens through gradual exposure, psychological resilience grows through repeated measured strain followed by recovery. Recovery is essential. Resilience is not constant tension. It is tension followed by release. Effort followed by rest. Activation followed by reflection. Without recovery, strain accumulates and becomes burnout. With recovery, strain becomes growth. Another element of resilience is mindset under difficulty. When pressure appears, the mind can interpret it as punishment or as training. Punishment shrinks you. Training strengthens you. If you see challenges as evidence that you are inadequate, stress multiplies. If you see challenges as evidence that you are developing capacity, stress becomes meaningful. Meaning reduces suffering. This does not deny discomfort. It reframes it. Growth mindset under pressure means believing that skills improve with repetition. It means understanding that clarity in chaos is not inherited, it is practiced. Each high-pressure moment becomes an opportunity to train regulation. Even imperfect responses teach you something. Reflection converts experience into learning. Instead of replaying mistakes with self-criticism, examine them with neutrality. What triggered the reaction? What belief intensified it? What could be adjusted next time? This is disciplined review, not rumination. Rumination replays emotion without insight. Reflection extracts insight without emotional collapse. Resilience also requires detaching identity from outcome. If every decision defines your worth, pressure becomes unbearable. You will fear mistakes excessively. You will hesitate or overcompensate. Clarity will suffer because ego is involved. But when you separate who you are from what happens, stability increases. You can make a poor decision without being a poor decision-maker. You can experience failure without being a failure. You can feel overwhelmed without being incapable. This separation protects mental balance. Under pressure, remind yourself, this is a situation, not a verdict. The more your identity rests on internal discipline rather than external results, the steadier you become. You begin to value process over outcome, preparation over praise, consistency over applause. External conditions fluctuate. Internal discipline endures. Resilient individuals are not fearless. They are familiar with discomfort. They have practiced being uncomfortable without reacting destructively. They have proven to themselves that pressure passes. Familiarity reduces intensity. Think of the first time you faced a high-stakes situation. The activation was overwhelming. But after repeated exposure, the same situation feels manageable. Nothing external changed dramatically. Capacity changed. Capacity is trainable. You build it through small acts of restraint, through intentional pauses, through reframing stress as information, through structured thinking, through simplified focus. All the disciplines you have learned so far contribute to resilience. Resilience is the cumulative effect of practiced regulation. Without resilience, clarity flickers. With resilience, clarity stabilizes. And stability creates confidence. Not loud confidence. Not arrogant certainty. Quiet confidence. The kind that comes from knowing you can handle activation without losing yourself. In the next chapter, we will explore confidence without arrogance, how to maintain calm authority under pressure without becoming rigid or defensive. For now, remember, resilience is not the absence of stress. It is the ability to remain steady within it. Train gradually. Recover intentionally. Detach identity from outcome. And pressure will begin to feel less like a threat and more like resistance strengthening muscle. Steadiness is built, not born. Chapter 11. Confidence without arrogance. True confidence is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not rush to prove anything. It does not overpower others to feel secure. Under pressure, this kind of confidence becomes especially valuable because it stabilizes thinking instead of distorting it. Arrogance and insecurity look different on the surface, but under pressure they behave the same way. Both seek control. Both fear exposure. Both react quickly to protect identity. Confidence does neither. Confidence is trust in your ability to handle what happens next, even if the outcome is uncertain. Under pressure, people often confuse decisiveness with confidence. They speak quickly. They commit early. They dismiss alternatives. But speed is not certainty. And certainty is not accuracy. Confident thinkers are willing to slow down. They are not afraid of silence. They are not threatened by questions. They are not destabilized by disagreement. Their sense of worth is not attached to being right in every moment. This creates mental space. Arrogance narrows options. Confidence expands them. When ego is involved, the mind becomes defensive. Information that challenges the current position feels threatening. Under pressure, this leads to tunnel vision. Only confirming data is accepted. Risks are underestimated. Alternatives are ignored. But when confidence is grounded, the mind remains open. It can receive information without collapsing. It can revise decisions without humiliation. It can admit uncertainty without losing authority. This is psychological strength. Confidence without arrogance begins with self-awareness. You must recognize when your reactions are driven by fear of looking weak rather than concern for making the best decision. This fear often disguises itself as urgency, as decisiveness, as firmness. Ask yourself in pressured moments, am I choosing clarity, or am I choosing comfort? Comfort wants resolution now. Clarity tolerates ambiguity long enough to see accurately. Another foundation of grounded confidence is competence. Competence is built through preparation. Preparation reduces reliance on bravado. When you have practiced, studied, reflected, and refined your thinking, you do not need to overstate certainty. You know your limits and your strengths. Preparation gives you something to lean on internally. When you are prepared, pressure does not demand performance. It invites application. Confident thinkers also understand that not every situation requires dominance. Many people believe confidence means asserting control in every interaction. But under pressure, overassertion increases resistance. It escalates tension. It invites conflict. Calm authority is more effective. Calm authority communicates stability. It sets boundaries without aggression. It listens without submission. It responds without reactivity. This kind of presence lowers pressure for everyone involved. Under pressure, emotional contagion is powerful. Anxiety spreads quickly. So does calm. When you regulate yourself, you influence the environment. Confidence also includes the ability to say, "I don't know yet." This phrase terrifies insecure minds. They fear it signals incompetence. In reality, it signals discipline. It means you value accuracy over ego. It means you are not rushed by pressure. Under high-stakes conditions, premature certainty is dangerous. The confident mind delays commitment until sufficient information is available. It is comfortable holding a decision open. It does not equate delay with weakness. It understands timing. Another element of non-arrogant confidence is adaptability. Rigid thinkers collapse when plans fail. They take deviations personally. They resist change. Pressure intensifies because flexibility is absent. Confident thinkers adapt quickly. They update models. They adjust strategies. They treat unexpected developments as data, not insults. Adaptability keeps the mind fluid under stress. This fluidity allows better decisions because it prevents fixation. Confidence also requires emotional regulation. If emotions dominate behavior, authority erodes. People sense instability. Decisions feel impulsive. Pressure increases. But when emotions are acknowledged and managed internally, behavior remains consistent. Others feel safe. Communication improves. Outcomes improve. Confidence is internal alignment, not external dominance. It is the alignment between what you know, what you feel, and how you act. Under pressure, this alignment is tested. Without training, it fractures. With practice, it strengthens. One powerful practice is separating feedback from identity. Feedback under pressure often feels sharp. If taken personally, it triggers defensiveness. But confident thinkers extract value without self-attack. They hear what is useful and discard what is not. This requires humility without self-erasure. Humility acknowledges limits. Confidence maintains self-respect. Together, they create balanced authority. The most respected individuals under pressure are not the loudest or the most forceful. They are the most stable. They speak when needed. They listen carefully. They respond thoughtfully. They do not need to win every moment. They are not afraid to change their mind. They are not afraid to stand firm when necessary. This balance is rare. It is also trainable. As you continue to practice regulation, resilience, and clarity, confidence will emerge naturally. You will notice less urgency to prove yourself, less need to rush, less fear of being questioned. You will trust your capacity to navigate complexity. In the next chapter, we will explore decision fatigue and mental overload, and how to simplify thinking when the mind feels overwhelmed. For now, remember, confidence is not loud. Confidence is not rigid. Confidence does not rush. Confidence is calm, open, prepared, and grounded. And under pressure, it is one of the most powerful assets you can develop. Chapter 12: Decision-Making in Conflict Situations. Conflict intensifies pressure faster than almost any other situation. When disagreement arises, the nervous system activates immediately. Tone sharpens. Posture shifts. Words carry weight. The body interprets conflict as threat to status, belonging, competence, or control. Under conflict, clarity is fragile. Most poor decisions under pressure are not made alone. They are made in interaction. When someone challenges you, interrupts you, criticizes you, or questions your judgment, the instinct is to defend. Defense feels protective. It feels necessary. But defensive decisions are rarely clear decisions. They are emotional reactions disguised as logic. The first discipline in conflict is recognizing activation early. Notice the signals: faster speech, tightened jaw, heat in the chest, urge to interrupt, urge to prove. These are physiological markers of rising pressure. If you do not regulate at this stage, escalation becomes likely. Conflict escalates when both parties react instead of choose. The difference between reacting and responding is timing. Reaction is immediate and emotionally charged. Response is measured and intentional. In conflict, the pause becomes even more important. When someone speaks sharply, pause before replying. When accused unfairly, pause before defending. When criticized publicly, pause before correcting. This pause interrupts escalation. Strategic silence is powerful. It communicates that you are not destabilized. It gives you space to process. It forces the other person to continue or reconsider. Silence is not surrender. It is positioning. Many conflicts intensify because both individuals are trying to be heard simultaneously. If you listen fully before responding, you gather information. Often, the real issue beneath the words is emotional rather than factual. If you respond only to the words and ignore the emotion, misunderstanding continues. Another discipline in conflict is separating facts from interpretation. If someone says, "This plan isn't working," the fact is that they disagree. The interpretation might be, "They think I'm incompetent." The interpretation fuels defensiveness. The fact allows analysis. Stay with facts. When you respond, use neutral language. Replace accusatory phrasing with descriptive statements. Instead of "You always undermine me," say, "I feel challenged when the plan is questioned publicly." This reduces escalation. Neutral language regulates intensity. Conflict decisions often suffer from one common distortion: the need to win. Winning is emotional. Resolution is practical. If your focus becomes proving yourself right, clarity disappears. You may make decisions that damage long-term relationships just to secure short-term validation. Ask yourself, what outcome matters most here? Is it ego satisfaction or long-term effectiveness? Emotional maturity chooses effectiveness. In high-pressure conflict, de-escalation is leadership. Lower your voice. Slow your pace. Maintain steady posture. Regulation influences others unconsciously. When you remain composed, the environment shifts. You cannot control another person's emotion. You can control your contribution. If the other person remains escalated, you still benefit from staying regulated. You prevent yourself from making impulsive commitments, harsh statements, or rigid decisions. Another important skill is boundary clarity. Being calm does not mean being passive. If a boundary is crossed, address it firmly without aggression. "I'm open to discussing this, but not in that tone." This communicates self-respect without hostility. Clear boundaries reduce recurring conflict. Sometimes, under pressure, you may need to delay a decision. Conflict clouds perception. It may be wise to say, "Let's revisit this when we're both clearer." This is not avoidance. It is timing discipline. Timing determines quality. Conflict decisions made in peak emotional intensity are rarely optimal. Emotional maturity means tolerating temporary tension for long-term clarity. You may also need to separate relationship from issue. Disagreement does not equal disrespect. Critique does not equal rejection. If you personalize disagreement, emotional charge increases. View conflict as problem-solving, not identity protection. When both individuals adopt this mindset, solutions emerge. When either prioritizes ego, tension persists. Even if the other person does not regulate, you still can. The goal is not to eliminate conflict. Conflict is natural in complex systems. The goal is to navigate it without losing clarity. Steadiness during disagreement builds trust. People learn that you are not reactive. They learn that pressure does not distort your thinking. This increases influence. Influence under pressure comes from composure. In the next chapter, we will explore how to train your brain intentionally for high-pressure environments, how to practice clarity before pressure arrives. For now, remember, conflict is not the enemy. Reactivity is. Pause. Separate fact from interpretation. Choose effectiveness over ego. And clarity will remain accessible, even in tension. Chapter 13. Training your mind for high-pressure environments. Pressure does not create your mindset. It reveals it. In high-stakes moments, you do not rise to the level of your intentions, you fall to the level of your training. That is why thinking clearly under pressure is not a talent. It is preparation. Most people wait for pressure to arrive before they try to manage it. But clarity must be practiced in calm environments long before it is tested in intense ones. The brain adapts to what it repeatedly experiences. If your daily habits include distraction, rushed thinking, emotional reactivity, and avoidance of discomfort, then under pressure, those same patterns will intensify. But if your daily habits include reflection, discipline, delayed reaction, and measured responses, then pressure will amplify stability instead of chaos. Training begins with controlled stress exposure. Avoiding pressure entirely weakens resilience. Instead, intentionally place yourself in small, manageable challenges. Tight deadlines. Difficult conversations. Skill-building exercises that stretch your comfort zone. These controlled stressors teach your nervous system that discomfort is survivable. The more often you experience stress without panic, the less intimidating high-pressure situations become. Another powerful method is mental rehearsal. Elite performers across fields use visualization to prepare for pressure. They imagine challenging scenarios in detail, objections, unexpected setbacks, critical questions, and mentally practice calm responses. When the real moment arrives, the brain recognizes familiarity. It has been here before. Visualization strengthens neural pathways without physical exposure. You can apply this easily. Before an important decision or event, close your eyes and imagine the pressure rising. Picture your breathing slowing. Hear yourself speaking clearly. See yourself pausing before responding. Train the response before reality demands it. Consistency matters more than intensity. 5 minutes of daily mental rehearsal builds more resilience than occasional dramatic efforts. Another critical component is cognitive discipline. High-pressure clarity depends on your ability to think in structured ways. This requires training your mind to question assumptions, evaluate risks logically, and separate emotion from analysis. One effective exercise is decision journaling. After making significant decisions, write down: what information did I use? What assumptions did I make? What emotions were present? What alternatives did I consider? Later, evaluate the outcome. This strengthens pattern recognition. Over time, you become aware of your biases under pressure. Self-awareness reduces future errors. Training also includes building recovery capacity. Pressure drains mental energy. If you do not intentionally recover, clarity weakens over time. Recovery is not laziness. It is maintenance. Sleep, physical movement, quiet reflection, and deliberate breaks restore cognitive strength. Mental endurance resembles physical endurance. Without recovery cycles, performance declines. Another aspect of preparation is value clarity. Under pressure, confusion about priorities leads to hesitation. But if your values are clearly defined, decisions become faster and cleaner. Know what matters most. Integrity, long-term growth, stability, opportunity, service. Whatever your hierarchy of values is, define it clearly before pressure demands choice. When stakes rise, you will have a compass. Uncertainty becomes easier to navigate when your direction is stable. Training also requires exposure to feedback. Avoiding critique weakens adaptability. Seek constructive evaluation regularly. Ask trusted individuals where your thinking becomes reactive or unclear. Growth requires accurate mirrors. When feedback becomes normal, it feels less threatening under pressure. Emotional regulation exercises should also be part of daily practice. Breathing techniques. Mindfulness exercises. Deliberate pauses before responding in low-stakes situations. These small repetitions build neural habits. Under pressure, the brain defaults to habit. Make calm your habit. Another overlooked component is language control. The words you use internally shape your perception of pressure. If you label every challenge as overwhelming, your body reacts accordingly. If you describe situations as demanding but manageable, your nervous system responds differently. Reframe language consciously. Instead of "this is too much," say, "this is intense, but I can handle it step by step." Language directs physiology. Finally, build identity around steadiness. If you see yourself as someone who panics under pressure, that belief reinforces itself. Instead, redefine your identity gradually. I am learning to remain calm under pressure. I respond thoughtfully in difficult situations. I think clearly when stakes are high. Identity drives behavior. Training your mind is not about eliminating stress. It is about becoming familiar with it. Familiarity reduces fear. When fear decreases, clarity increases. High-pressure environments will always exist. Deadlines, crises, competition, uncertainty, they are part of growth and leadership. But with preparation, they become arenas for performance rather than triggers for panic. In the next chapter, we will explore decision-making under uncertainty, how to choose wisely when you do not have complete information. For now, remember, pressure reveals training. Train daily. Build habits of calm. Rehearse clarity. Strengthen recovery. And when the moment arrives, your mind will already know what to do. Chapter 14, the after-decision review process. Decisions under pressure are never final in terms of learning. Every choice, whether successful or flawed, carries information. Yet most people move on immediately, ignoring what each decision can teach. This is why experience alone does not guarantee improvement. Reflection is the multiplier. The disciplined mind treats every decision as data. Not validation. Not judgment. Data. After a high-stakes choice, the first step is detachment. Step back emotionally. Do not label yourself as right or wrong. Do not rehearse blame. Pressure often leaves a residue of guilt, frustration, or shame. Leaving these emotions unchecked distorts future perception. Neutrality is the foundation of insight. Once detachment is achieved, begin the review. Examine the context. What were the facts available at the time? Which assumptions guided your choice? Which were accurate, and which were flawed? This is not self-criticism. It is observation. Observation creates understanding. Next, evaluate your process. Did you follow your mental frameworks? Did you pause adequately? Did bias influence your perception? Did you react to emotion or respond with deliberation? Identify patterns, not failures. The goal is clarity, not punishment. Notice the timing. Many decisions under pressure are rushed unnecessarily. Was the urgency real or perceived? Did taking an extra moment produce better options? Did you identify reversibility appropriately? The answers highlight where internal regulation succeeded or can improve. Also, examine communication. In high-pressure decisions involving others, clarity is shaped as much by how you convey choices as by the choices themselves. Were instructions precise? Were assumptions explicit? Did emotion interfere with tone or authority? These details influence both outcomes and credibility. Reflection extends to consequences. What followed the decision? Were results consistent with your expectations? What variables were unforeseen? Did your frameworks anticipate the most critical risks? Were adjustments required, and were they implemented effectively? Do not judge outcomes in isolation. They exist within context. A good decision can have poor outcomes due to external factors. A poor decision can have acceptable outcomes by luck. Learning depends on process assessment, not outcome alone. Record your observations. Writing externalizes thought, reducing cognitive load. A decision journal creates a repository of patterns, pitfalls, and strategies. Over time, it reveals trends invisible in the moment, recurring biases, habitual reactions, and areas of strength. The review process also strengthens self-awareness under future pressure. Familiarity with your own tendencies increases predictability. You learn where stress magnifies bias, where emotion dominates, and where clarity persists. Anticipation becomes preparation. Another layer is proactive adjustment. What would you change if faced with a similar decision again? Which practices prevent past mistakes? Which strategies consistently support clarity? Adjusting processes in calm reflection builds decision intelligence faster than trial and error under chaos. This is the essence of the learning loop: act, reflect, adjust, repeat. Each cycle improves speed, accuracy, and resilience. Importantly, this process requires consistency. Reflection after only major events is insufficient. Daily micro-decisions also provide valuable insights. Did you pause before responding to a critical message? Did you maintain composure in a tense conversation? Did you apply frameworks to small choices? These everyday practices compound into habitual clarity under pressure. Additionally, review your emotional patterns. Which emotions were triggered unnecessarily? Which were constructive? Emotional literacy is essential because feelings are data. They indicate what the mind perceives as threat or importance. Awareness converts emotion from distraction into guide. Reflection is incomplete without integration. The lessons learned must inform future actions. Adjust mental frameworks. Refine timing habits. Strengthen pauses. Reinforce simplification practices. Each insight must translate into applied discipline. Finally, maintain a growth-oriented mindset. Decisions are practice for mastery, not judgment of character. Each choice contributes to competence, resilience, and self-trust. Avoid perfectionism. Embrace improvement. The goal is skill, not flawless execution. Over time, this habit of post-decision review develops what can be called decision intelligence. You become someone who not only survives pressure but grows because of it. Clarity becomes more consistent, emotional responses more measured, and confidence more grounded. Reflection transforms pressure into training. Stress becomes a teacher, not a tyrant. Patterns of failure become feedback, not shame. And with repeated cycles, even the most intense situations feel manageable. In the next chapter, we will explore the final transformation, becoming calm in chaos, how to internalize all these practices to live and act as a clear thinker under any conditions. For now, remember, every decision is data. Detach from outcome. Observe process. Learn systematically. And your future decisions will become sharper, steadier, and more reliable. Chapter 15. Becoming calm in chaos. Calmness under pressure is not passive. It is active mastery. It is the culmination of every discipline you have practiced: emotional regulation, structured thinking, resilience, confidence, reflection, and deliberate training. Calmness does not appear by accident. It emerges from repetition, preparation, and conscious alignment. To be calm in chaos, begin with identity. Declare to yourself, I am steady under pressure. Not as aspiration. Not as hope. As fact. Identity shapes behavior. The mind acts according to the roles it believes it inhabits. When you internalize steadiness as part of who you are, reactions become aligned with that identity. This identity shift rewires perception. Events no longer dictate your state dictates your response. Pressure becomes data. Stress becomes information. Emotion becomes signal, not command. Next, anchor in process over outcome. Chaos is unpredictable. Outcomes are never guaranteed. Obsessing over results creates urgency, fear, and impulsivity. When you focus on disciplined processes, pausing, labeling emotion, applying frameworks, simplifying, and reflecting, clarity emerges naturally. Outcomes become consequences of skill, not panic. Calmness also relies on deliberate detachment. Detachment is not indifference. It is observing without over-identifying. It is participating fully without ego interference. In every tense moment, remind yourself, this is a situation. I am not defined by it. I am participating with skill and composure. Breath is another anchor. The body often reacts faster than the mind. Shallow, rapid breathing amplifies pressure. Slow, deep, controlled breathing signals safety to the nervous system. Micropauses, inhalation, exhalation. These simple acts stabilize the mind instantly, even when external chaos persists. Clarity is also strengthened through mental rehearsal. Under calm conditions, Visualize challenging scenarios repeatedly. Picture yourself responding with composure. Imagine obstacles, criticism, and high stakes. Practice internally what you wish to perform externally. When the real moment comes, familiarity replaces panic. Your mind knows the rhythm of clarity. Another cornerstone is selective attention. Chaos bombards you with noise, both internal and external. Calm thinkers filter relentlessly. They identify what truly matters. They ignore distractions. They conserve focus for variables that impact the decision or outcome. Attention is a finite resource. Protect it. Emotional regulation remains central. Even the calmest mind experiences activation under chaos. Recognize waves of fear, irritation, or doubt. Label them. Observe without reacting. Allow them to rise and fall. Discipline is not suppression, it is navigation. Steadiness also communicates influence externally. Calmness is contagious. When others witness composure, tension decreases. Conversations remain productive. Decisions are less reactive. Your presence becomes a stabilizing force. Leadership is often more silent than loud, more steady than forceful. Reflection is ongoing. Calmness is not a single act, it is continuous reinforcement. After each high-pressure encounter, review what worked, what disrupted clarity, which practices succeeded, which require adjustment. Integrate lessons immediately, without self-criticism. This completes the cycle of preparation, execution, and growth. Confidence without arrogance fuels calmness. Trust your preparation. Trust your frameworks. Trust your identity. Uncertainty will always exist, but confidence grounded in competence prevents urgency from dictating action. Calmness is confidence manifested. Simplicity amplifies calmness. Mental clutter reduces it. Decision fatigue erodes it. Clear priorities, structured processes, and reduced noise allow steadiness to persist even under extreme demand. You cannot maintain clarity if the mind is fragmented. Resilience protects calmness. Repeated exposure to pressure builds tolerance. Every practice, every controlled stressor, every reflection strengthens the nervous system. When real chaos arrives, it no longer triggers panic. It triggers performance. Finally, integration matters. Calmness is the synthesis of all practices. Pause before acting. Separate facts from emotion. Apply frameworks. Simplify decisions. Maintain confidence. Regulate the body. Reflect afterward. Repeat consistently. Over time, this becomes instinctive. Calmness transitions from technique to identity, from practice to lifestyle. To embody calm in chaos, live with intention. Structure your routines to include mental rehearsal, reflection, recovery, and deliberate exposure to challenge. Define your values. Build your identity around discipline, clarity, and composure. Train your mind daily, even in low-pressure conditions. This is the long-term path to mental mastery. When these disciplines converge, you reach a profound transformation. Pressure no longer dominates. Chaos does not control. Challenges become opportunities to demonstrate clarity. You think clearly, choose deliberately, and act with measured authority, regardless of external circumstances. Remember, clear thinking under pressure is a skill and a lifestyle. It is built moment by moment, decision by decision, reflection by reflection. You do not wait for mastery to arrive, you cultivate it continuously. Internalize this identity. I am steady under pressure. I respond with clarity. I act with intention. Speak it, practice it, live it. Your mind will follow. And with calm authority, you navigate every situation, not as a reactionary participant, but as a disciplined thinker, resilient and clear. You have journeyed through the strategies, disciplines, and mindsets that transform pressure into clarity, chaos into calm, and reactive thinking into deliberate action. Every chapter has offered tools to help you pause, reflect, simplify, and act with confidence, even when the stakes are high. Now, ask yourself, what will you take from this audiobook into your own life? Which practice will you apply first to think more clearly under pressure, make better decisions, and strengthen your mental resilience? If you found these insights valuable and want to continue building your clarity and calm under pressure, Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more self-help audiobooks designed to train your mind, sharpen your focus, and transform the way you think. Your next choice, to act on these lessons, is already the first step toward mastery.